If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? And are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So far. Fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Here everybody singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for November 11th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on social media at Open Voice Gate. And if you would like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside your other host, Case Lowe. And Case, I just have to get this out of my system here. He's gone. Nico's gone. And it feels like unsatisfying.
Nico Harrison is gone. I don't know if this was real or photoshopped, and we live in a post-truth society, so I guess it doesn't matter, but I did see a photo today of his Instagram bio, and it was changed from general manager of the Dallas Mavericks to girl dad, which, if that's true, that's incredibly funny. If that's not true, that's still incredibly funny, just in a different way. But I would like to think that even our most Euro of listeners would know about the Luka Doncic situation. For those that don't, 9 months ago, Nico Harrison was running the Mavericks, traded at worst, one of the 5 best players in the NBA, somebody still in their 20s with massive upside who had just taken their team to the final. Yeah, 27, who had just taken their team to the finals the year before and traded him for the constantly injured Anthony Davis, and then talked a lot of smack about Luka Doncic on the way out of the building, which is not what I would have done, as Luka is now very much in shape and dominating on the Lakers, and Anthony Davis is hurt. And
classic breakup mindset there. Everyone knew this would happen with Luka immediately, right?
Oh my god, yes. No, it's literally the ultimate revenge body. And even with the Mavericks improbably winning the number 1 pick in the draft lottery this past year, which I'm certainly open to your conspiracy theories, anybody's conspiracy theories on how that turned out to be, because it was such a statistical anomaly that they won. They got Cooper Flagg, and I'm still very bullish on Cooper Flagg in the long run. But it has been a tough start for him. It's been a tough start for the Mavs. And Luka without LeBron and the Lakers has been an absolute world beater. So, I think in a just world, I think in a right world, this would have happened after the first game that Luka played for the Lakers. It was a colossal mistake that should have been somewhat rectified immediately. Instead, we had this 9-month saga where we all knew this was coming. For a very brief moment in time, it looked like the Mavs were maybe a little bit smarter than we had given them credit for, but they are in fact bad at basketball this year, and Nico Harrison is out of the job.
I am certain that Nike will probably hire him within the next 6 months, or the LA Lakers should, because one thing I did learn today, Case, during all this coverage, because, national holiday kind of, but when you have this kind of thing breaks in like a market like this, that becomes everything that anyone talks about all day, at least within the media. I did not realize, talk about the tale of 2 franchises. When Mark Cuban, the former primary owner of the Dallas Mavericks, sold the team to Miriam Adelson, there was a big talk about the control share, and he was, and then it later came out because all the Luka news. Everyone's like, doesn't Cuban have the share? And it's like, no, Nico Harrison managed to glad hand his way into basically making all decisions. But interestingly enough, do you know who still has a control share of their team, even though they just sold the team for a massive amount of money? Some might say an accurate valuation for its franchise.
I do not.
Jeannie Buss still has the control share of the Lakers.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah. Tale of 2 franchises. One guy gets out of town, thinks he has control, and doesn't. The other team ends up getting the guy. They end up getting out of town, but they still have control of the team. And they're $10 billion richer.
Not a good situation in Dallas, just all the way around. I think from the Cuban exit onwards, things have gone very poorly, with the one caveat that they did make the NBA Finals 2 years ago, and now that could not feel longer ago.
Yeah, no. It feels like the one thing you can do is trade everyone but Flagg and Lively for picks, and just your window doesn't exist. Your window is maybe 4 years from now, but you have to build it straight up with those 2.
It'll be interesting to see what happens when Kyrie comes back, because I don't like Cooper Flagg at least at this point in his career. I think it's a little unfair to have him run the offense, given the fact that he's a rookie and not a natural point guard, even if there are natural ball handling abilities there. I would like to see how he would play not running the offense, and I guess we'll have a look at that at some point this season. But for now, it is dark times in Dallas.
It might be dark times in the Metroplex, but Case, it is a hot time over in Dragongate, as we are now fully deep into the King of Gate 2025 tournament. Case, that is Dragongate's #1 championship. We had last week, we talked about the kickoff day at Corkin Hall. That was on Thursday, but we've had virtually at this point 3/4 of the first round be decided. 4 more matches coming up this week, and then getting into round 2. But Case, I think just leading off the show, we should just talk about the tournament as a bracket and where it's at. And I feel like I kind of want to hand the ball over to you to see where we want to get going with this.
Oh, that's exciting. I enjoy just the symbolic nature of hitting King of Gate every year, no matter where it falls in the calendar. And this is now the second year in a row that we've had it in November, which is always an interesting time. Last year, we did not see most of these King of Gate matches. This year, we were greeted with the news at the Korakuen show last week, which we talked about on last week's episode. If you missed that, we did a King of Gate Korakuen review last week. And then I also have a written review of that show up at voicesofwrestling.com. But we were greeted with the news that we would get the tournament matches on the network at some point. And I will say that I am quite happy with the turnaround. The fact that we have the matches from the 9th and the 10th on the network already is a much better turnaround than I was expecting. So from a general vibe standpoint, I'm satisfied. I'm not fully in love with how things are going, but I'm satisfied with how things are going. I thought that was a middling Korakuen show, one of the weaker Korakuen shows of the year, and certainly one of the weaker opening night Korakuen King of Gate shows that they've had in their history. But I enjoyed this Kobe show, and I have found for the 2 house show uploads, the show on the 9th and the show on the 10th, for there to be one match that is worth going out of your way to see on each of those shows, and then a fine undercard King of Gate match as well.
Yeah, I would largely co-sign with that. I think I'm a little bit higher on the second uploaded match into Tottori maybe than you are, but
I think everybody is. I think I liked it, but I think everybody likes it more than I do.
I mean, I thought it was in general fine. I put it at a 3, but in comparing that to what we got between Kai and BB Hulk, it's just to me, I feel like there was a huge modicum of difference there, to be honest. But yeah, I feel like that we knew that it was kind of a nebulous thing of, okay, everything would kind of be up there, and for them to kind of quietly say, oh yeah, no, everything from Tottori, and I'm blanking on the other city, but the 9th and the 10th is already up there. And some of that probably is made easier that it was the end of the tour at Tottori, and they're off basically up until Thursday this week. And then they have another set of 4 shows. So you kind of have like this nice period, I feel like, that at least in theory, that the uploads can kind of come out on when they return from tour. And I know that next week with Gate of Nostalgia in Tokyo, it's a bit of a longer one for that. But I feel like at least for like what we would want for a knockout style tournament, especially with the idea of some of these places that they're going to aren't the biggest towns that they are that they tour, and especially not the buildings of that, having them up in like this kind of manner. You're right about it. It was a pleasant surprise, and I have to say, at the least, I came away from Kobe Art Center a lot more positive about the day's tournament matches than I was coming out of Korakuen at the very least. I thought that there was some real good wrestling. There's a smart bit of business that I think happened as well. But in general, I'm pretty pleased with where we are after the first week of the tournament.
Well, I want to get into the bracket stuff right away. I guess real quick before we do that, because I think breaking down the bracket is a little bit more interesting than breaking down some of these matches. But spoiler-free match recommendations on my end would be Rita versus Dragon Dia from Kobe, Gianni Valletta versus Dragon Kid from Kobe, El Cielo versus Strong Machine J from Kobe, and Yamato versus Hyo from Kobe. So now that I look at that, I realize it's all the tournament matches from Kobe, which is actually a delightful surprise. And then on the show that followed that, which was in Matsuyama, I would strongly recommend as well the KZ versus Jason Lee match. And then the following night in Tottori, I would recommend in Jackie Kame's hometown, Jackie Kame versus Kagatora. That would be what I would be sure to check out from King of Gate. If you've missed anything so far, Mike, do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, so I will talk about it a little bit more in tiers. I think that the one match out of the 8 tournament matches that's worth going out of your way for between Kobe, Matsuyama, and Tottori is Yamato versus Hyo. I think that was by a good margin the best match of the weekend. And then the Tottori match of Kagatora and KZ versus Jason Lee from Matsuyama. I would slot that right below that. And then after that, the one match that I think that we might have a little bit divergent opinion on, I did not really care for Strong Machine J versus El Cielo. I thought those two didn't have good chemistry whatsoever. And it had a fun finish, but I didn't think it had necessarily the polish that I would hope for that match. But by and large, I think everything tournament wise, other than Hulk versus Kai, is worth going out of your way for.
I would agree with that. I will circle back to El Cielo thoughts as we progress throughout this podcast. The bracket as it stands now, I'm just going to go through these first round results. Yuki Yoshioka defeated Madoka Kakuta. We have yet to see the Takashi versus UT match. That correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. Is that in Nagoya? Is that in UT's hometown?
Yes, that is UT's homecoming show on Thursday. It is already sold out, by the way. So the winner of that match goes on to face Yoshioka in round 2.
Did I, not to get off base already, did I read that the January Nagoya shows are already sold out as well?
It's a different building.
It's a smaller room, but they are doing a double header
Kicking off the year, on the 10th.
and those shows are sold out.
There's no tickets available on Lawson's, at least.
The daytime show, is that sold out as well? Yes, it is. Yeah, okay, so smaller building, but UT doing some business in his hometown, which is always nice to see. So we will get that match later this week. And we will also get Masaki Mochizuki versus Kota Minoura later this week. The winner of that match will face Shun Skywalker, who defeated Naruki Doi and Korakuen. Ishin versus El Kukui is now set for the second round. Jackie Kame in his hometown defeated Kagatora, and he will get the winner of Susumu Yokosuka versus Ben K. And that match is happening
Saturday in Yokosuka.
Thank you. The same night as Mochizuki versus Minoura. I've got 2 tabs open. I couldn't flip over fast enough.
Yep, I got you, and I can go over what's going to be happening on the round 2 matches from this weekend too.
Yeah, so we'll get Rita versus Kai in the second round, as well as Ryoya Tanaka versus Yamato, which is a rematch of Tanaka's debut match. We'll get Gianni Valletta versus KZ in the second round, and then the winner of Mochizuki Jr. versus Yoshiki Kato will wrestle El Cielo in the second round as well. So that is where we stand. Yoshioka, Skywalker, Ishin, Kukui, Kame, Rita, Kai, Tanaka, Yamato, Valletta, KZ, and Cielo guaranteed into the second round, and a few of those spots still open, which we'll figure out later this week.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows what to expect for this week, the shows are in Nagoya, Yokosuka, as well as one other tournament show in Saga, or in Fuji City in Shizuoka. In Shizuoka, there will be the start of the second round. We have one of those matches decided. That's going to be Rita versus Kai in the second round. And then the winner of UT and Takashi will be facing Yuki Yoshioka, also in Shizuoka on Sunday.
Yes, so I would say through the results of the first round, I'm still very surprised by the Tanaka Homare finish, because when these brackets first came out, I thought that Homare might be a threat to win the entire thing. I'm, for as much as I love Shun Skywalker, slightly disappointed that he defeated Doi, just because I was hoping that Doi was going to have a pronounced run in this tournament. Other than that, I think things have been chalk, with the exception of Yamato versus Hyo. That match headlined the Kobe Art Center show, and I know you have strong feelings about this. I do as well. I kind of want to talk about that match before we go any further.
Yeah, I think that is... I think I like it more than Doi versus Skywalker, so I guess technically it's my match of the tournament at this point. And the thing is that they did kind of a sneaky thing in this match, at least with how it was formatted, worked, and especially with the Kobe kind of crowd. We kind of got what would have been, in theory, if Yamato retained at Kobe World in July case, and he continued defending the belt and racking up defenses. When Hyo would have been up in the lineup, when it would have been his time to have his first defense, I think it would have looked a lot like this match. And I think for that, it just was such a real tour de force of Hyo, who, I mean, he has a busy November already with that Taiji Shimori match at Gate of Destiny, and then with this one. And I think my huge takeaway out of this was the chemistry that they have, where Hyo was going for the Samson driver, and Yamato kept on kind of finding ways out of it, and getting the kick out of a Galleria, and then Yamato having to go so this is serious business here. Let's go Ragnarok and finish this thing. And for in a city that there's been a lot of really strong matches this year. I mean, I think about Hamare versus Jackie Kamei as part of the Bravegate tournament. The whole final day of Rey de Parejas might not have been in this building, but I was going through my spreadsheet and my Dragongate notes this week, Case, and it just so happens that like while I went through it, I kept on going to myself, damn, they have really had some strong matches in the hometown this year. And I feel like Yamato versus Hyo and King of Gate was not like the high of Kamei versus Amare back in April, but I think it was as strong of a singles match as Hyo has had maybe ever. And I think that Yamato really kind of brought it back to his Dreamgate run and how he worked the match. And it very much felt like that this was the mirror universe of what that Dreamgate match could have been if Yamato was still champion.
You hit on the point I was going to make right at the very end of that, which is you and I have watched Hyo's entire career. We both remember him debuting. We've followed quite a journey over what has almost become 9 years. I went to the spreadsheet archive. You know, I've got match of the year tracking for 2014 onwards, which is frightening to think I've been writing down wrestling matches I like for 11 years now. But I've got.
Okay. Before we get into this case, so you have this spreadsheet. I just have like my stack of notebooks. I'm just making sure, like, if something were to happen, I need to get that spreadsheet. You need to get the notebooks. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yes. No. The power of Control F is something that I cannot take for granted. I like being able to search for things in my spreadsheets because I end up in a situation where I watch a match like Yamato versus Hyo, and there's a number of spots that I want to break down here because I thought there was some really, really high-level wrestling done. Some things that as the match progressed, I was hoping they were going to do, and that they did, which is, yes, some great form of confirmation bias, but also at some point, you just know what you're wanting out of a match, and when you get that, it's quite exciting. And I left this match going, I think that might be the best singles match of Hyo's career. Let me fire up all the spreadsheets I've got with his name, and let's take a look at the best singles matches of Hyo's career. And to my shock, I have only had 3 Hyo singles matches at 4 stars or higher. Does that number surprise you?
I would say no, just because of he was a shtick guy basically up until 15 months ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, I expected maybe a Mochizuki Dojo match to pop in there, maybe a Bravegate match to pop in there. But even as I go back and I look at his Bravegate run, you know, I remember a lot of these matches topping out at 3 3/4 stars. It was the joke we used to make about Daya. It was also something that held true for Hyo. You know, I really liked that Flamita match he had last June, but that was a 3 3/4 star match. The singles matches of Hyo that I have at 4 stars or higher are Hyo versus Jason Lee from October 15th, 2022. Now, where that falls in the calendar, just without looking, I would assume that is a Kobe Sambo Hall show. I'm going to confirm right now, just to be sure, October 15th. That is a Bravegate title match between Hyo and Jason and Kobe. I remember that now, that headlined that show. That felt like a big deal. Also on that show, Yuki Yoshioka versus Kaito Nagano. May we pour one out for Kaito Nagano. Opening match, Dragon Daya and Madoka Kakuta versus Ishin Ihashi and Mochizuki Jr. I'm sure I like that. I should look through my notes there.
2022, we're talking about Isha and Sudo being member of M3K.
Yeah, they're listed on Cage Match as members of M3K.
Yeah,
so,
I remember this card exactly because I also, if I were to pull up Dragongate Network, I could tell you exactly like what era of Hyo this was. This is the kind of Hyo fan I've been over the years. This was when he was kind of doing the Razor Ramon thing with the toothpick and the vest. It was this era of Hyo at that point.
So I really liked that. That was a match that, again, I went 4 stars on. In chronological order, the next match that I have at 4 stars or higher would be from the beginning of 2024. And again, these are only singles matches. In 2023 and 2024, he had a very large number of matches that I thought were at 4 stars or higher, but those were multi-man matches. You have to go to Korakuen Hall, January 11th, 2024, another match that headlined a show. This was Shun Skywalker versus Hyo in a singles match. This is right when Hyo was turning and beginning to form what would be Big Hug.
Yeah, this one, this was 2024. Big Hug exists. Or this would have been like
Big Hug as Hyo and Monte.
Right. Yeah. No, he's already turned face at this point and is Bravegate champion.
They might have formed as an official unit on that show because it was Monte versus Kame in a singles match on the undercard. I don't remember the specific timeline there, but I had that at 4 stars. And then I also had, from just a few months later, another Bravegate match, Hyo versus Yasushi Kanda from Champion Gate in Osaka 2024, which had no business being as good as it was. But I thought those guys worked so hard, and I really liked that match. I thought it was Old Man Kanda at his best, right when he was winding down that miracle run. I thought it was Hyo, full of life, full of energy, doing things that he does in an excellent way. And I have those 3 matches at 4 stars. And I am happy to report that leaving Yamato versus Hyo in Kobe on November 8th, 2025, I have that match at 4.25 stars, making it the best Hyo singles match in his career.
Yeah, and it really does feel like at this point he has broken through that 3.75 star general kind of tag here. What did you think of Yamato kind of baiting Hyo somewhat through the with the Galleria sequence in this? Because I thought that it was kind of really interesting how Yamato was going to that kind of depth in this tournament already.
I thought the way that both of these guys worked this match was absolutely fascinating. I thought Yamato played the exact role that he should have, very similar to the Dragon Dia title defense. I think very similar when you go back and you look at that Dreamgate run, just to reference what you were referencing earlier, very similar to that Dia match, very similar to that Strong Machine J match. Given his relationship with KZ, it even reminded me of that KZ match a little bit, where he was not only in control for most of the match, but there was something greater at play. Yamato using his years and years of experience, that veteran status, to sort of hold a dominance over Hyo that even Hyo, almost 9 years into his career, it pales in comparison to the run that Yamato has had. So you had Yamato in his element, playing this cocky, dominant veteran, which I think is his best effort. And then you had Hyo personifying Scrappy, doing everything that he should have been doing while working underneath. And this match, the longer it went, turned into an ankle match. There's the figure 4 spot that goes on for quite a long time where Hyo's in the middle of the ring. Yamato's got him locked in a figure 4. I found that to be very compelling. I liked that spot a lot. What made me so happy was the spot that I was sort of hoping as this match progressed. I knew Hyo was going to get there. I knew he was going to get to this spot because it's a Hyo match. He can't go a single match without doing this, which is when he's at the corner, guy runs at him in the corner, he goes up over the top, does the back handsprings across the ring. That's the thing that, in Vegas at that Game Changer show we were at, that got a huge reaction because that's just a level of athleticism that we might take for granted because Hyo does it every match. But in America, not a lot of guys can do that. So Hyo, after having his ankle worked over for most of this match, he does those back handsprings across the ring, but that final one, he plants, he grimaces, he holds the ankle, and Yamato comes back and does the go to hospital 2, which he would normally do in the corner to somebody's head. He does that to the knee of Hyo and takes him out. And I thought that was brilliant. I knew they were going to have to address that spot in some form or fashion. I was open to the idea of Hyo doing those back handsprings cleanly, powering up, fighting through, fighting spear spot, run of offense, and then, whatever the finish was going to be whatever the finish was. Instead, he sells it. Yamato times that drop kick beautifully. That, to me, was the highlight of the match. That was Hyo working at a high level and Yamato working at a high level. I thought that was great.
And I think that it also, as you're saying, the way that Yamato really has found that edge since 2024, or at least into this stage of his career, it felt like the thing that absolutely was the right move to do at that time. It's when Yamato is taken to certain depths, it's not necessarily that he is someone like Yuki Yoshioka who's just going to start powering through it and he's going to survive on just force of will. Yamato is going to be oh, okay, how do I get this back to my advantage? Oh yeah, no, this is going to be, you're way too agile your ankle has already been worked. I'm just going to target that, and it's going to leave me that opening to my closing stretch. And I just think that for someone like to be able to like pull off that, and then also for just like Hyo, as good of a babyface performance that you'll see all week. I feel like just because it's just he at this point, like we talked about how because of like the good hug, the big hug thing, about how basically he then like was able to kind of like tap into the charisma aspect and crowd connection, and at some point, and one could say look at the Doi produce show with the match with like Jiro, that sometimes and Ray Parejas, it just becomes a little bit unwatchable and that kind of thing. But when he's able to kind of gear that into a match itself, I feel like that he has some of the most powerful crowd connection out of anyone working today. Like that, I think that he is someone that he will be on the KZ path for a while, but like he is going to have that fan base behind him, and being able to tap into that and really only come alive with that, like starting year 7 of his career, is a real testament to him.
I think this is the sort of match that you have to watch volume up, no commentary. I think you get a lot out of hearing Kobe and hearing the calls that Hyo gets, and really enjoying this match the longer that it goes. The other thing that I thought was great was Hyo going for the Samson driver, Yamato countering that into an ankle lock. Hyo gets to his feet. He misses an enziguri, which I thought was great, and Yamato turned that into a sleeper hold. And from there, he's never really able to recover. Gallery and then the Ragnarok for the finish, and Hyo's done. Again, 4.25 stars, the best Hyo singles match I've ever seen. And, unless you want to factor in, say, a Dead or Alive cage match, which he was brilliant in a year and a half ago, for as many great matches as Hyo has been a part of, and when you factor in those multi-man matches, some of those unit disbands matches, all the great things he's done, Vegas main event, I think this was the single strongest Hyo performance I've ever seen. This was my favorite thing that he specifically has ever done.
Because this is Hyo as Hyo and not Hyo like in the format, right? Like this is sheer force of himself versus like the Vegas 6-man, where it's like, all right, we're doing it. We're doing the modern version of the Dragongate 6-man. Time to go into the crowd, y'all. So it feels like really nice to see, and especially for someone who had like that level of momentum, and especially in a tournament that this year, it being single elimination, having that kind of match coming out of the tournament, as your only tournament match, feels really strong for him, especially since this is a format that this is it. We're not doing a loser revive battle royal this year. This is it for it. So it was the right performance for him to have for this tournament this year.
I agree. I think this, even in defeat, I think this did a ton for his profile. I am intrigued by your thoughts on Cielo versus Strong Machine J.
I think that so first and foremost, like we have to address the Cielo of the matter of that they've been very careful about where Cielo is, and when he in matches that Cielo has been booked in, you notice that he will come out and in Saipatra matches as since Saipatra got announced, but he's not necessarily wrestled all that much. And I wonder if that's a level of that into it. So El Cielo advances with a spinning tombstone pile driver in a match, 5 minutes, 28 seconds. And I really like the start of it. We got activated Strong Machine J, and it felt like, in a way, you had like Strong Machine J in like the all white mask versus El Cielo with his black mask. And I was like, all right, this is actually feeling like this can be kind of a hot contest. But as things kind of got moving within the match, and I felt like within some of the spots that we now kind of know as like the big shine spots for El Cielo, like the cartwheel evade and stuff like that, and like his the way that he gets into the limit bomb, it feels like that these two guys just were not on the same page to me. And it just, at least to me, like it was a 2.5 star match that could have been, with this kind of format, easily a star higher for me, but it just did not. I don't know if I'm the person alone thinking this, but it just it underwhelmed when I was anticipating this to be a strong match with how they built it, with like Cielo winning the Battle Royal last month, and I felt kind of really let down by it.
I approach this El Cielo match as it got underway, the same way that I would approach like an early 2000s CZW undercard match, where I just wanted to see Cielo do cool moves, and every move he did was super cool. And I think I was focused far less on flow or chemistry, or really, to be quite honest, anything that Strong Machine J was doing, because they've designed Cielo's offense to where everything blows my mind.
Oh, like the way that he converted into the spinning tombstone pile driver was sick as hell. Like, don't get me wrong, there were some really like great stuff. Like, he ends up doing the cartwheel evade after the first time, where he kind of lands on SMJ with it, and the way that he's able to get into the moves, and especially like those sorts of things with maintaining a level of aura, absolutely still did that. It just like maybe like the build up and having SMJ like cut like the spirited promo against the guy into a match that ends up being 90% El Cielo maybe set my expectations a bit higher for where it should have been. When this, if you just do this as like an El Cielo bomb show where he comes in, wipes out the leader Strong Machine or Strong Machine J, the leader of Natural Vibes, and stands over him kind of looking down on him like, is this it? That rocks. But just like the match of and of itself and like the flow, as you were saying, just didn't work for me.
So I think, it's a good chance to look at the bottom of the bracket, because Yamato and Cielo are in similar places. That second round, the way that it's set up, it's going to be Rita versus Kai and Ryoya Tanaka versus Yamato, and
Right.
The winners of those matches facing each other. That feels like a very obvious Kai-Yamato match. I don't understand why they wouldn't go in that direction. I think Rita can afford to lose to Kai. I don't see any reason why Tanaka should beat Yamato. And then you have Yamato beat Kai. That puts Yamato in the semifinals. That makes too much sense to me to ignore. I feel like that's the way that block is going to go.
Yeah, at least like this, the top half of that side of the bracket. Unless you kind of really are doing like Tanaka is on a different level, he pulls off the upset against Yamato, and then that is going to go more towards D-Curds dissolution, because guess who couldn't beat Yamato as Bravegate champion outside of the tournament? That was Dragon Dia. So like I could see that kind of being a thing, even though Dia beat Yamato in the tournament last year, that they might want to play up a little bit. But it does seem like neither Rita or Kai are going into the semifinals. It's most likely going to be Yamato, but I can't discount Tanaka's potential of an upset.
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, that's an interesting angle. I think the way, even though we're getting all the matches this year, I think the way they format this tournament in November always throws me off, because if there was a second TV building where there was Yamato versus Tanaka, and it was in Osaka, or it was back in Kobe, or it was in Fukuoka, or even Kyoto, I think logic would go, okay, well, that opens the door for a Tanaka victory. But as I go through this schedule here, that match is
it's going in Kunamoto.
Oh, is that okay? That doesn't really tell me anything, does it?
Yeah, no, and they have not announced where the quarterfinal. So we only know matches through next weekend, actually. So it's Kunamoto. So that's a Genki show. But that one is going to have Ishin and Kukui and Yamato and Tanaka on the 22nd.
Fun lineup there, but I'm still thinking that Yamato versus Kai makes too much sense there, and then they'll do Yamato in the semifinals, and we'll go from there. The bottom half of that side of the bracket, so you've got Valletta versus Dragon Kid, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Valletta advanced there. KZ versus Jason Lee. KZ advanced there. You're going to have Cielo versus the winner of Kato and Mochizuki Jr. I think it makes way too much sense for Kato to win that match, and I think Kato will beat Cielo. I think they're setting Kato up for Gianni Valletta, and if there wasn't a heel champion, I would say the way they're treating Yoshiki Kato would make me think that he has a possibility of beating Yamato. I do not think that's the case right now. I think they'll do Kato versus Cielo, and then Kato versus Valletta, with Valletta beating Kato. And then you find yourselves in the situation where I don't know if they're going to scramble the brackets come the semifinals, or if we get Yamato versus Valletta in the semifinals, which I would be incredibly excited about.
Yeah, I don't know if they're scrambling it. At least like this lineup I'm reading off of is the Spora blog for it, and it's all it says about after the second round. The quarterfinals are happening in Oita and Umuta, and that all they say is two tournament quarterfinal matches will be held on both those nights.
Yes.
So we don't have anything.
Yeah, so no more intel there, but it does raise the question, I had Hyo as the winner of this tournament when we approached it and got the brackets and got the layouts and everything. I thought he would beat Yamato, and I thought they would set up Kakuta versus Hyo as a Cork and Hall Dreamgate match, and obviously we're not going to get that now. And as we get through most of the first round of these matches, I am now left staring at the possibility of Gianni Valletta, King of Gate 2025 winner, and I have to say that really intrigues me.
And I think this is a good time for us to jump into that Johnny versus DK match, guys, because I really enjoyed the episode of Pro Wrestling Paradise that you did with Alan this week, talking about the career of Eddie Guerrero, and it kind of turns it into a discussion on little things like stumbling and baseball slides and the parts of the wrestling world where we don't really like see anymore. And I have to tell you, the more that I watch Johnny Valletta and the more we have like this Johnny Valletta pseudo kind of face turn or just like the tweener shift with Saipatra, buddy, I think like it must be the most fun thing in the world to work Johnny Valletta, because this match he had with Dragon Kid, it was a fun ringside kind of brawl, and it kind of, in a way, this match, especially with like the way that like working with Johnny Valletta, other than body slams, you're not necessarily bumping all that lot. It must be the most fun to work to work against this guy in this company, especially if you're a veteran like Dragon Kid and knowing you're going to take the job here. Johnny catches an Ultra Hurricanrana attempt, and he just sends Dragon Kid into the mat with a huge choke slam, the King Kong knee drop to win. And we need more of the little things, because I think Johnny Valletta does a lot of the little things and the things that aren't necessarily splashy in Dragon Gate, and it's really become one of the most like engaging acts in all of wrestling today.
I will continue to repeat myself. I think the work they've done with Valletta is the single greatest booking accomplishment in wrestling over the course of the last 2 years since he came into Dragon Gate. I'm completely blown away by what they've done with him. The fact that they've been able to keep this act fresh, and the fact that they've now been able to pivot this act into something else. And I find Valletta's work in this new role, I'm stunned at how well it's going. And it's also, it's worth mentioning, I should say, he's doing this against perpetual babyface, you can't turn this guy heel because nobody other than Ultimo Dragon hates him, Dragon Kid. And he still effectively was able to not come across like a deranged killer that you should boo, but a deranged killer that you should cheer. And I thought the work here, the only way I could describe it would simply be a nice piece of business between these two. And I know that now every time Valletta's in the ring, I am looking forward to that camera being in the lower corner of the ring, underneath the turnbuckle, shooting that King Kong knee drop the way that they do it. I look forward to that spot now. The spot, the camera angle, the finish, I look forward to it all, and it continues to deliver every time out.
Yeah, and like the little things, like the idea that Dragon Kid goes for a Bible. Okay, so we've watched Dragon Kid matches since he basically debuted, like throughout the show, but at least as a podcast, but off and on for the last 9 years. Yeah, the Bible is like the last gasp. Okay, if Dragon Kid hits the Bible as like his flash pin, you anticipate that to be 3, and then the major upset. No, Johnny kicks out at 1, and it feels completely deserved, because how can that even phase Johnny Valletta?
It was excellent. Again, the way they treat him, it goes back to almost like the Don Fuji stuff we used to talk about, where the people that would enjoy Don Fuji most are the people that would never watch him. The people that would have enjoyed Kaito Ishida versus Keisuke Okuda matches the most are the people that will never watch them. And there's always this through line with Dragon Gate where they do such classic old school wrestling and they are ignored by a certain population of the fan base because they have their preconceived notions as to what Dragongate is, which is incredibly frustrating. I was just reading an old DVR. I was doing research for the Mochizuki Hall of Fame episode that we did, and oh god, what crowd did he compare it to? Dean was writing about the Absolute Amente 2001 cage match, and I believe he compared Dragongate. Oh god, I gotta see if I can find it now. This is gonna drive me nuts because he compared it to a territory in a way that I had never really heard it described before, and I thought it was so interesting the way that he did it. Let me see if I can find this real quick. I'm gonna talk through this Google search because I had it pulled up somewhere, and now I forget the exact way that he described it, but I want to get it right if I can find it. I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, which is going to drive me crazy. Let me see here. That's not doing anything. Nope, it's pulling up the wrong DVRs. That sucks. 2001. Anyways, he was describing Toryumon as like Crockett, at its peak with the crowd fervor and the women and the heat in this promotion. He was describing the heat of it. And Valletta's just another one of those guys that he should be sung from the mountaintops, from the flagship podcast and from the Segunda Kata guys and from Dave and Brian, if Brian were ever going to watch wrestling that wasn't WWE. Every single outlet that has any sort of critical voice should be praising the work that Gianni Valletta has done. It's going to be interesting for me as we get into FSM 50 season because, it's not like Valletta is Nick Bockwinkel in between the bells. And I'm also not watching any of his work that happens outside of Japan. So this year I've got, maybe 20 matches to go off of televised. We came in and did Rey de Parejas this year, or at least did that tour of Rey de Parejas this year. He wasn't in the actual tournament, and then left after the Mochizuki match in May, which was a brilliant piece of business, and then has come back in October and has picked up right where he left off. At the very least, that's a guy on a ballot that, because of the state of wrestling, is going to be filled with Dragongate guys and CMLL guys and not much else. I don't know. Is Valletta the 50th best wrestler in the world just because he understands who he is as well as he does?
I really think so.
Or are we just at a point where because I would also hear the argument, to contradict myself. I could listen to the argument that maybe we're just overinflating the very basic fundamentals, and that this is no different than a Segunda Kata guy saying that Matt Hardy's 2009 ECW run is the greatest North American championship run of the 21st century. Maybe that's how we sound to some people, but I do think there's something deeper with Valletta there. And the thing that always blows me away with him is that this all could have gone so wrong. I mean, you and I watched that Corkin debut match where he did all of the right things, at least in my review, I wrote that he did all of the right things, but he played to crickets. And it very easily could have been a thing where he showed up in January, he left in May. A year later, we went, wow, that was weird. Remember when they brought in this guy? Put him in the Chris Bosh, Human Tornado, Kevin Steen category of weird foreigners that have come over. And instead, I can't imagine Dragongate in its current ecosystem without him. I mean, he's just become such an amazing part of this promotion, and I'm so thankful that he's here, and I'm so blown away by the work that he's done.
Yeah, and it's really at this point, and at least like me within like my wrestling fandom and like what keeps me kind of interested. And there's always the aspect of Dragongate that just because it's that chocolate and peanut butter that works for at least my brain and what I want with like pro wrestling. But it's also like the idea of you have someone like Johnny who essentially like doing the heel Bruiser Brody, now kind of turning into local big man wrestling like 1980s style. And it's just like, it is such like an interesting thing to add into the formula that it's maybe not necessarily me becoming a small things guy and really talking about Rita's Gator rolls and how more people should use Gator rolls as transitions. But instead, it's just like the idea that you're getting something, at least with Valletta, that is, it should not work. And I was I tried not to be feet in the mud too much about Valletta as soon as I saw how it was in the trios matches, and then when they figured out how to use him best in singles. But it's really turned out to be the gift that keeps on giving. And I mean, Valletta versus KZ, I'm just absolutely fascinated about like I expected that Valletta is going to win, obviously, but just like what that match is going to be is now, I think, at least as I'm looking through the second round matches and at least to anticipate advancing onwards, unless there is some upset with Mochizuki Jr. over Yoshiki Kato and we get Junior versus CLO, I think this is my most anticipated second round matchup already, is Valletta versus KZ.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that match is going to be fascinating. Credit to you. You found the DVDVR review that I was looking for. I'm going to read this real quick because I think this is such great writing. This is from DVDVR. Oh my God, I don't even have the number. I am useless
135.
tonight. Thank you. I got nothing going for me. What a bummer. I thought I was going to be able to find that while I was talking and I couldn't.
But let's pat ourselves on the back for the teamwork there. You gave me the time to go search and find this by just basically doing web crawling, and it's hard to find those DVR things, and you have the great quote. So, I mean, good for us.
This is Dean talking about the 2001 cage match with CIMA, Magnum, Darkness Dragon, Mochizuki, and Dragon Kid. And about halfway through his review, he writes, the Torimon gets the scathing attacks from the Puro Dork Kingdom for being too US in its booking, but the heat Torimon generates is the Watts and Houston level, not the cheap Stanford kind, so it's okay in my book. I actually love that kind of shit. Heel and face stables is the coolest form of wrestling if done well, and this is all done pretty well. And then he continues on to the match, and I'll just read this here. The match itself is fucking brilliant from a story standpoint and from a wrestling standpoint. I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of people not watching Dragon Gate would really like Dragon Gate if they just watched it.
Yeah. Just turn brain off, just vibes. Just go with it.
It's not even like that's the frustrating thing is it's not even a vibes promotion. There's some deep story stuff going on here, and I've said this for 5 years now. I really think it's true. I think there's it's why I'm so insistent. I mentioned this on the Allen podcast that I did. It's why I'm so insistent on, even if it makes my daily schedule a little bit difficult, especially when there's 2 shows that I've got to review in the span of 1 week. It's why I'm so insistent on keeping the pattern of doing the written reviews for voicesofwrestling.com, even if I know people don't consume those the way that they used to, because they don't consume writing the way that they used to, because nobody knows how to fucking read anymore. But there is something to be said about documenting history in written form rather than audio. And I think there's a large portion of English-speaking Japanese fans that when Jay stopped doing those big Korakuen recaps and those big promo translations, people assume that Dragon Gate stopped telling stories. I still think, this is a promotion rich with story, rich with detail. It doesn't always come through in the way that we hope. You and I both thought the Twin Gate build for Osaka was lackluster, which is a shame because that ended up being such a great match. But this is still a story promotion. It's far deeper than a vibes promotion, than a good time promotion, than a turn your brain off promotion. It is still a story-driven promotion, but I don't think, whether it's just not keeping up with the promotion in the same intensity that they used to, or not watching the English commentary when they have a chance, I don't know what it is, but it's still there. The things that made Torimon great 20 years ago and that made Dragon Gate great 10 years ago are still active in 2025.
Yeah, and talking about like the storytelling, like with that Twin Gate match not necessarily having the build that we wanted, we came out of Gate of Destiny with a lot of build towards the opener on Kobe, the 4th of the King of Gate matches, Rita versus Dragon Dia. Dragon Dia, after losing the belts, immediately said, Rita, I'm coming after you and getting revenge for what happened. So, you even have a little bit of story and show-to-show storytelling here. So Rita versus Dragon Dia. Rita advances with turning the end over, which is Dia's backpack kind of driver that he does sometimes. I had to look that move name up. That was going to be done off the top rope into an avalanche Retanic. I really enjoyed this one, and it was kind of like the fascinating part of Dia's career right now, where he's now the veteran having to kind of get through younger and faster and smaller problems than he is. And Rita has had himself a real strong start of November. And I just really enjoyed how it was like full rush from the start, and Rita doing gator roll transitions. Just that is the small thing that I would love people to pick up, using a gator roll transition into another kind of move, because that works out really well whenever Rita does that.
I almost went notebook on this.
I was 3.5, so you're not out of school here.
I mean, I had to like talk myself out of it because I thought that might be a little excessive, but Rita's a flawless wrestler. You know, that guy doesn't make mistakes. He constantly innovates. I loved the middle rope double stomp that he did. That was, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody do that move quite like that before. He's doing all the gator roll stuff. He's got a great drop kick. He's got a great dive. He does the middle rope Titanic. Like, this guy's unbelievable. And I thought this match was stellar. I get 3 3/4. I had to talk myself out of going 4. And the right guy won too. With all due respect for Dragongate, I'm so much more interested in a second round Rita match, even if it's going to be short and he's going to eat a medial impact and be out of the tournament. I like that Rita got this win here.
Yeah, and I like the aspect of Daya was never really able to catch up with Rita's speed, because aspects of like the telegraphed like standing moonsault where Rita gets his knee up in like the most painful way to get up for like that kind of thing, and it really kind of felt like Daya was trying to survive, and then that's why he had to go to like the big gun, trying to go for the end over off the top rope, and instead Rita, faster, more wrestling talented, I think that's fair, grappling talent, was able to get out of that and just powerbomb him into the mat for 3. Felt deserved. Rita has a new theme song. We couldn't hear it very well, but everything is looking up Rita right now.
Yeah, one of these years, I think he's going to go on a miracle run, and I'm going to quite enjoy it. I don't think that time is now. Obviously, being settled in love and peace, you can't possibly have good things. We're biting off more than we can chew. He's a
Twin Gate champion.
I know. We're biting off more than we can chew as is. I'm sure it'll be a 0 defense championship run, and then Jackie Kame will do nothing for 6 months, and then he'll have another 4 3/4 star title match, and we'll go, God, they should do something with this guy. Just feels like that's the direction we're headed. But God bless him. I thought this match was great. I love the intensity of this match too. This was the kind of junior heavyweight wrestling that I get really excited about, where they're flipping around, they're moving really quick, but everything looks like it's killing the other guy. I really thought highly of this match. This Kobe show, the non-tournament stuff did not do a ton for me, but the 4 tournament matches I thought were all really, really fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just to touch on the non-tournament stuff, Case, before we move on and talk about the other 2 nights of tournament action. We had a 10-man tag, Fuji, Monte, the ex-Mochizuki Dojo kids, versus Ultimo, Kung Fu Masters 2, and Mondai Ryu. It was the slingshot rocket punch to get the win for Reach Tominaga. Yeah, that felt necessary. Yasushi Kondo was the latest veteran to be befuddled by Jiro Shinbashi, and he wins with a briefcase spot. That seems to be like his version of the failed German suplexes, people stealing the briefcase and shooting him with it. Royal Sambo, UT won that. And then we had a 3-way tag, Yoshioka and Tanaka of D-Courage versus Kakuta and Ishin of Gaja Dokuro versus Shunmare of Sai Patra. Breaking down with a injury for Hamare, his heavily taped shoulder gets incredibly attacked, and Ishin gets the win by referee stop. Hamare is off shows, and they did kind of injury angle, taking him to the back afterwards with that. So he's off of future shows, and hopefully that this is just a little shoulder thing and not one of the big shoulder things.
I agree. Well said there. I was enjoying that match until the finish. I thought they had something going there, but I understand why the finish was what it was, given the state of Hamare's shoulder.
Yeah, and that also makes a lot of sense why Hamare was kind of booked to the way he was in the tournament. If his shoulder has been taped up virtually since his debut, or at least I feel like it's been more taped up than not taped up over the last year. So hopefully, like it's something that's rest or like not a serious shoulder thing. And we know how shoulder things can become kind of ongoing. So one hopes that, especially at 20 that his career is not going to get a big stop by this.
I agree.
All right, moving on to Matsuyama. We only have the 2 tournament matches there. Let's talk about the week 1 first. BB Hulk versus Kai. Kai converts a first flash into the authorized Ganosuke clutch to win in advance. He faces Rita in the second round. And hey, we got a Kai and Hulk match in 2025, and it was exactly why we were kind of tired of seeing these guys have matches in 2021.
I will say, I think you have slightly more disdain for this than I do. BB Hulk completely whiffing on the apron spin kick that he does was a bad look. Very rarely in Dragongate do you see a spot look that bad.
Yeah, it did not feel like it was a tournament caliber match. And when you have a tournament that is single elimination, it kind of sucks when this is like the BB Hulk match in the tournament, is one that he has bad spots, and it just felt like it was mandatory in the worst kind of ways, the match.
I would say counterpoint, we've got BB Hulk out of the tournament now.
Yeah, no, imagine this was Hulk versus Rita second round. I don't know.
I do not want to see that. The Kai match is going to be short because that's how they have their singles matches. You know, I get the ongoing Kai Rita story that has sort of bubbled underneath the surface for the last few years. It'll be quick. Rita will try to steal a win. Kai will kill him. But I'm way more into Rita versus Kai than I would be Rita versus Hulk.
That's fair. Then the second match, we had Matsuyama. KZ versus Jason Lee. Big time match. Felt like a big match. And I thought that outside of the main event in Kobe, this probably ends up being the best tournament match of the weekend.
Interesting. You liked this more than anything on the following night?
Yeah, I like this more than Kagetora and Jackie Kamei. I had them both at 3 3/4, but if I was picking one over the other, I think I would take this one just because I felt like that this was kind of almost worked like a heavyweight style match, and it was a lot more like strong, tight work than things in that match going up until the closing stretch where Kagetora just slapped the crap out of Kamei for 3 minutes.
So I would as well. I'm very surprised. I thought you would come on here gushing about Kagetora and Kame, which I thought was very good, but I liked this match more as well. And I sent this match, I put it in the Discord publicly, but I tagged Jesse Collins because I know Jesse is such a big KZ fan, and my thoughts on KZ and Jason Lee are well documented. And I am so glad. This is why, to me, the King of Gate stuff going on the network really, really matters. And I love the way that they filmed this. Again, it wasn't a broken system. When they were doing the house show YouTube uploads, it was not a broken system. That was my favorite way to watch Dragongate. I liked those uploads more than the stuff that actually went on the network. To see these two guys work as crisp as they did, as I try to hold off a sneeze here while talking about this match, to see these two guys work as crisp as they did from the camera angle that this was shot at, which was right underneath one of the bottom turnbuckles, right on the ring, super close to these guys. I fell in love with the work of this match. This is one of those things I always go back to where I go, well, I just think the working standard for Dragongate is so much higher than any other company. It's why when I rank the best wrestlers in the world, there's so many Dragongate wrestlers. It goes to a match like this because I think universally, even if this wasn't a notebook match, I've got it at 3 3/4 stars. I just think there was a level of professionalism to this that most people cannot hit.
Yeah, it just felt like that both the guys came in with the air of that this was going to be a big time tournament match, and it felt like that they did it. I thought that it was it kind of started off as the kind of KZ match where KZ is going to take a lot of just crazy neck bumps, and it's going to be how he can survive, but how it kind of transitions over to at least like KZ turning it on, getting the CDJ, which does kind of feel like the kind of match that with KZ, if it's going to be one of like big match KZ, I feel like that CDJ feels like a big moment, and then having that kind of flow into the impact and just kind of in a way in 2 moves completely crater Jason Lee. I felt like that it felt like the kind of finish that you'd want to have for someone like KZ in a tournament. I mean, there's always going to be like the KZ fan that goes like, oh, KZ could sky to schoolboy Gianni Valletta, and then maybe it ends up being Kato, and then before you know it, KZ's in the tournament semifinals. It could be KZ time once again, and I feel like it's important to have like that kind of performance in a first round match to kind of engender that kind of support. So yeah, I thought Jason was as fierce and as stiff as you want him to be here, and especially as like now he's really kind of matured into the heel role and kind of like what is going to be now the future for Jason Lee, now mentally kind of a little bit more backburnered, and having like a match like this and Matsuyama just absolutely rocks. Like this is the kind of match in this kind of tournament that I'm going to go back to and being like, yeah, but when I'm talking about person of the tournament, that KZ versus Jason Lee match was something special, or at least momentarily felt special.
Jason countered the running uppercut into a sleeper hold, which I've never seen anybody do before. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it felt really vicious and earned.
That's what I like about this tournament so far. Is I think, like, I almost think that's what was missing from Tanaka Homare. Is when you look up and down the lineup so far, like Hyo versus Yamato was really, really physical, and Valletta versus Dragon Kid was really physical, and KZ versus Jason Lee, these guys beat the shit out of each other. Kame and Kagetori, these guys beat the shit out of each other. Doi and Shun, I can't stop thinking about the Doi 5's counter into the butterfly suplex that Shun does, where he deadlifted him off the ground in a butterfly suplex, because I've been watching Naruki Doi matches for half of my life and I've never seen anybody do that before. That match was incredibly physical. The good parts of Kakuta versus Yoshioka, they were beating the shit out of each other. Tanaka versus Homare is like the outlier here, because I didn't think they were as physical as they should have been.
And that probably in retrospect was because Homare's shoulder couldn't take it, you know?
Yeah, no, it was, that match and the sort of messiness of both the pacing and the execution of it, not to read too much into it, but it does seem to make a little bit more sense now.
I'm with you with that. Let's talk about Tottori. We had two matches there from the 10th. El Kakui versus Ryofuda. This was probably, if there was the way to bet on Dragongate match's case, this was the one that would have been taken immediately off the board and not offered first round. El Kakui wins with a second rope, Spanish fly that I kind of liked Fuda a lot in this. Like, Fuda's never kind of stay die, but the crowd in Tottori wasn't really like necessarily up for it, but it was more than I expected out of Fuda, and we at least got the moment of he tries to go for the Hiryu and he just absolutely eats shit from Kakui, and that was what I was kind of hoping for in this match. And since that happened, I was able to slap a 3 on it and had a good time.
I was not prepared for the middle rope Spanish fly, and so that really caught me off guard in a good way, but man, was I not ready for that move to be hit right there. So that was quite exciting. I didn't know what I was getting into. This is, as I continue to be Fuda's harshest critic, which is maybe unfair of me, but he always excels when he's in the ring with the Mochizuki. I think the other thing that he's proven to be very good at is running into walls and running into guys that are bigger than him. So I do think Fuda looked really good in this match.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily kind of the thing that, like, Fuda having a good match against El Kakui, like, I guess it's kind of expected with like the brick wall that you laid out here. I'm just glad that there at least were a couple moments in this match that I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And that amused me greatly. The hometown boy, Jackie Kamei, had his King of Gate first round match against Kagetora. He won with the JFK into Jackie knife. And this, I really like. I was a shade off of 4. I think I like KZ versus Jason Lee from the night before a bit more, but I kind of go back to the way that Kagetora just dismantled Kamei's knee in this match, and the wild seated Apache pump bump that Kamei does towards the end of this match. And I'm looking at this, and I'm wondering, why am I set and thinking that KZ and Jason Lee was better than this, when this was what you would want to have between these two guys in a first round King of Gate match.
I think Jason versus KZ was slightly better than this, but I am continually blown away. And I think blown away is actually the apt term here, given the fact that I've always been historically a little bit lower on this guy than other people have. Blown away by how good Kagetora is in 2025 on a show in, show out basis, which has never been his reputation. It's the thing with Kagetora was always when he's motivated, he will crush it. And a lot of the time he's not motivated. And I don't know what it's been this year, but when you look at the show in, show out paradox stuff, you're not getting that from Susumu. You're not getting that from Hulk. You're not getting that from Dragon Kid even. Yamato has, the much, much, much higher ceiling of output this year. But there's a consistency to Kagetora's work that's all kind of 3 1/4 to 3 3/4 that I have become a really big fan of. I'm enjoying Kagetora now more than I ever have at any point in his career.
Yeah, I would say that, well, it feels like that I don't know what age Kagetora is. I was going to say, like, he turned like a round number and just decided to choose murder. Well, but it feels like, though, so he's the 43, so that analogy completely falls apart. But it feels like this year he just has like a extra little bit of zing on everything, maybe. And that's what it is, because I feel like he's really had that Apache punch now into, like, he's had that move for years. Like, we've seen him do that, like, dating back to, Kagetora getting recruited into Kamikaze back in 2009. Like, that's been kind of a constant with him. But I feel like in this match and in like the last few months, he has just been like slapping the crap out of people, and he really was able to haul off against Jackie Lee in this match. And I at least I really enjoy the way he works the Apache punch. But like the knee stuff that he did, like his slingshot senton into a dropkick to the knee, I have always liked how Kagetora uses slingshots. Like there was that slingshot, like hand cartwheel DDT that he did for a while, and then he's had some other stuff that he's done, like vaulting into the ring. But I felt like just like the way that he did it, it looked like he like came in real heavy, and Kamei screamed out for like death after it, and it left enough of a mark on me that I wrote it in my notes. At least I thought that it rocked.
It's not a position that I would necessarily expect Kagetora to be in, but he did come across as the perfect villain to have in a match in your hometown. This was the Kame Homecoming show, and Kagetora traditionally has not been the monster that Yamato could be, or that Shun could be, or that Valletta is just by his presence, or that Mochizuki is just by his presence. But this was the sort of bully outing that Kame needed in his hometown. It was a very impressive piece of work. I really, really like Kagetora in this match.
And I miss having homecoming matches and hometown matches. So
I talked to somebody who goes to a lot of Dragongate shows, and they tell me time after time the best Dragongate experience is the, whether it's Tottori or it's Gifu or it's insert small town here where this wrestler's from, the homecoming shows are the best live fan experience there is.
Yeah, and I just think of like the Stalker performance in his hometown and all the stuff there, and how it just adds a little bit of life here, and it's nice to see. And we're gonna have another homecoming coming up this week that we'll get to see parts of, Case, because of the tournament matches coming up in Nagoya City for UT on the 18th on the 13th on Thursday, as well as in Yokosuka for Susumu. And before we move on to some other stuff to close out the night, let's talk about Gate Nostalgia coming up on Monday. We've had more and more stuff announced to it, and it's turned out to be, we don't have like a full card at this point, but we have a lot of it. And at least, what's your takeaway of how Gate Nostalgia is coming together for Monday?
I have mixed feelings on it. I don't know. I think I was more into the first version of this show than the second. So what we have now is Jiro Shimbashi versus Johnson, Florida for the Aware Gate Championship. We have the most fearsome unit deciding 6-man 3-way tag match with Yamato, BB Hulk, and Naruki Doi, and Problem Dragon, with Problem Dragon representing Matt Blanky, Deep Drunkers of KZ, Yasushi Kanda, and Araken, and Gaja Dokuro of Madoka Kakuta, Ishin, and Yoshiki Kato. And we also now have announced the Strong Machine army of Strong Machine J and 2 mysterious Strong Machines versus the Jimmies, Susumu, Kagatora, and Genki Horiguchi. And we have Masquerade, Shun Skywalker, Dragon Daya, and Coach Minoura versus Diamante, Hyo, and Daya Inferno, which of the matches announced, that is the one that intrigues me the most.
Yeah, I feel like the most fearsome heel unit thing, that's just an excuse to get a Mad Blanky performance, and then Gaja Dokuro looks strong, penning Deep Drunkers. Am kind of intrigued about the new Strong Machines, just because I think that it would be really entertaining to have Sahara as a Strong Machine. I think he could actually really do it quite well, but that Masquerade versus RED match, kind of positioning it as like the many people of which Shun Skywalker have like directly bothered, but also like in some kinds of ways, it does feel like you're having like within this match, like if we assume that they're going to get Yoshioka to do Inferno here, like it does in a way, that match feels like we are going to get to kind of see something that might further build on to normal continuity shows, at least with the idea of you're having Daya having to go up against the guy who took his mask, and then Yoshioka. And at least as someone who's on D-Courage, the D-Courage Extinction Watch, this feels like something that could play into that.
Possibly. It'll be interesting to see, but I think you and I both have very fond memories of covering RED versus Masquerade in real time, and even if that is not the most vintage of matches possible for a show like this, I like that lineup a lot on paper, that match specifically, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and Juryo Shimbashi going up against Johnson, Florida. I know you are not a Florida Brothers guy.
That's something for you, not for me.
Yeah. It's nice to have a little treat on a show like that. And Jiro Shinbashi still remains to be pretty charming. The act seems to have some legs to it. So, he's got to face his elder sometime, Case. And, with Yagi, this like probably, there's only so many more Yagi and ring performances we're probably going to get before he fully hangs it up. So, it's kind of a nice thing.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. You don't have to say yes, but are you doing a written review for that show?
Let me look at my schedule for that, but I can't.
Because I don't think I am. So if you're not, then I just don't think we're going to get one. Or somebody could volunteer. We'd love to have a new writer at voicesofwrestling.com, but I do not think I'm going to be writing about that show.
I mean, I think I will. Now that I'm looking at my schedule, I feel it. So yeah,
take it away, Mike Spears. No argument from me. And I'm looking at this show will be fine, but I don't want to do that.
No, and especially like as we saw last year with these are completely out of continuity. Just like, hey, we have another date that we have to fill, so why don't we do this versus another Buyuden, or Skywalker doesn't have a new show idea yet. Like that's kind of how I feel about this Gate of Nostalgia show.
Yeah,
because it's happening right in the middle of King of Gate too, which feels very weird to me.
That does feel very weird. You're right.
But, Case, there was one thing that I think or kind of two things that we had left on our schedule for this week. We promised last week we have to talk about the Gleat, and we have to talk about Gleat Ver.Mega from Yokohama Buntai from November 3rd. And what seems to be now the last match of CIMA, at least in Gleat, as it seems to be if you take things at a surface level. But I know you took time to see this match and to dip your toe back into Gleat, so I'm kind of interested to see like what your impressions of the main event for a very unsuccessful major show for the problem half of the Dragon system.
Well, before I talk about the match, because I actually have a lot of thoughts on CIMA versus Lindaman. That's the only thing I watched on this show, because I watched that first, and the atmosphere was not exactly an inviting one, and so I tapped out on the rest of the show. But Can you catch me up?
Yes, I can.
On just whatever's happening with CIMA right now.
So, at least I think it was yesterday, it was announced that CIMA has a pretty bad shoulder injury, and that he is right now at this point he he has withdrawn from all of the future remaining Gleat matches. He posted basically like the doctor's note on Twitter, but it's a shoulder injury, and it seems like, as someone who was kind of went into the show on the 3rd and thinking that, like, okay, we'll see what really kind of comes out of it. I'm just going to read the press release from the Gleat website with this. And it's that CIMA has been diagnosed with a torn rotator cuff in his left shoulder impingement syndrome, and injury to the long head of his left biceps tendons, which will require hospitalization and surgery, and he'll be absent for a while. The timing of his return will be determined in consultation with his doctor. He'll be relinquishing the G Infinity title, and no mention about the fact that CIMA's contract is alleged to expire on New Year's Eve of this year.
It's all very strange. I really don't know what to make of any of that because, as I said 2 weeks ago, I felt like the CIMA contract stuff was a little bit too loud to be fully believable, and I was waiting to see where that was going to go. I have no reason to believe this injury is a work. I also have no reason to believe, and this is maybe where we'll disagree, but I have no reason to believe that this is some elaborate ruse to get out of dropping the Gleat tag titles.
No, like the story goes, and part of the reason why everything got so weird was out of that Cork and Hall show that CIMA won the G Infinity tag titles with Kurashio Tokyo Japan. He thought, and he went up to Kurashio, or he claimed he went up to him, like, asking him, like, okay, so when do you think we're going to start defending the title? Do you think we'll do it in Yokohama? And Kurashio basically said, I don't think I'm on that card here. And CIMA was going, oh, that's weird. And then the G-Rex thing got announced. So that this does not feel like that whatsoever, at least if you're taking what CIMA says at face value. And like, it seemed like that the guy was actually, this was something he was a little bit into. So I don't see why he would be trying to find a way to get out of the title belt, the tag situation, seeing that that's like the one thing that seemed to be on the level with him in this whole entire situation.
And it's hard to take CIMA at face value, but it's also hard to take any of this stuff seriously. And I think this is one of those instances where maybe I've just been doing this long enough to where I simultaneously have too much information and not enough information. And my reaction when I have that feeling is to just take a step back. I understand why you wouldn't want to take CIMA at face value, but I also, this seems like a pretty legitimate injury. I mean, he was a guy, I'll get to the Lindaman match in a second here, but he's a guy who was barely hanging on physically, and I fully believe that the Lindaman match could have torn his shoulder off of his body almost. So I don't know what to make of any of this. I know it's not, it's a little like, I don't know if you saw the Bears-Bengals game last week, but the Bengals were winning huge for most of the game. The Bears made a comeback. All the Bengals had to do towards the end of the game was make one tackle on a tight end, and it would have been extraordinarily hard for the Bears to win. And they just whiffed on the tackles. The tight end ran into the end zone. Bears ended up winning the game. And afterwards, Bengals offensive players were talking about, like, man, you don't understand how hard it is to win when you don't have a defense that has your back. And so if that's happening publicly, I can't imagine what's happening privately. And whether this CIMA stuff is a work or a shoot or it's a combination of both, the fact that we know so much publicly, or at least there's so much information made available publicly, means that things are weird. I just don't know what way they're shifting.
Yeah, and like, if you at least look at this in a position of just seeing health, like, I'm not surprised that Gleat, they claimed 700 for that building case. And I know you only saw the main event, but you kind of heard what they tried to do to make it sound like it was not much more of a completely empty house with it. And I think multiple things can be true at the same time here, because you have a company that, I mean, we've study Japanese promotions now, not just with this, but with like those days, and it gives us like a little bit of more of like insight of getting to tell when like a promotion is going down south. And it's been apparent to everyone that Gleat has been going down south for a long time, and maybe self-interest plays in for a little bit with it. But you also have the aspect of, I'm looking through CIMA's social media, and he has a photo of himself in the sling. He's posted his doctor's note, and it just kind of, in a way, feels like that this could be all those like issues backstage and in front of the house happening at the same time. Also, while this promotion is going down, also when your most bankable star is now probably going to be out for, I mean, I'd be surprised to see CIMA before summer of next year wrestle again, just from how those injuries are described, at least in his health. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy that we always knew had less matches in front of him than behind him, and at the very least it was built as it could have been one of the last ones. But I just have now I have a feeling that sometime in 2026 we're going to see him pop up somewhere and probably do that like run before you do your final run and be out of the business within the next 2 years. Like, it feels like that kind of situation with this injury to me.
I think you're right, and I think this Lindaman match might have been the last real great vestige of CIMA that we're going to get, because this match took a long time to get going. It's a long, old school world title match in a way that I just didn't think CIMA still had any of this left in him. So I was impressed by the length of this. First of all, I was struggling with this match for the first third of it, but when it kicked into a higher gear, and oddly enough, I thought it kicked into a higher gear when they started rolling around on the mat more, because the older CIMA's gotten, I've always enjoyed his grappling. I think he's a special mat wrestler, and I wish he spent more of his career doing that sort of stuff. But it was like CIMA countering a cross arm breaker by hooking Lindaman's heels and then rolling into a submission of his own. That's the sort of stuff that got me off of my couch in this match. That's the sort of stuff that at this iteration of CIMA's career that I enjoy so much. You factor in the concept that Lindaman gets busted open on the turnbuckle. He's gushing blood for the last 5 or 10 minutes of this match. And by the end of it, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Not quite enough to go notebook, but I'm glad that I watched it. As somebody who's watched Lindaman's entire career, somebody who's one of the biggest CIMA fans there is, I'm glad this match existed. I'm glad we got the one singles match between these two that we're going to get. And I thought it turned into a pretty special match. It does feel like that, given the length, given the physicality, given the aftermath of it, CIMA doesn't have another one of these left in him, which is an incredibly sad thought for me, because there are very few wrestlers I've ever enjoyed watching more.
Yeah, and it does kind of feel like the kind of match that if he is going to go out on his terms, Lindaman kind of as like the last true protege of him, saving this match and having kind of the performance where it's kind of a shame when you see like him at this state, and it's hard not to compare him to like Mochizuki and Dragon Kid and people, his contemporaries who are in much better shape, because I feel like the match, like, it's 26 minutes long. That first third, it kind of felt like that CIMA needed that first 10 minutes to kind of loosen up and to get really into it and be able to perform the last 2/3 of it. And at least as I've been like more watching CIMA's later parts of his career, it does feel like he has that aspect of, like, in the past in these Dreamgate matches that he would have, the thing would have been like, oh, they go work a limb for 10 minutes and then it doesn't play into anything else with it. And that was always the thing that dinged CIMA's singles matches, was like the idea that his premier style of singles wrestling wasn't necessarily a style that would work across all demographics. And instead, I feel like he's become a lot more wily about his limitations in a match like this, where I rewatched it today, and the fact that like CIMA starts attacking Lindaman and undoes the turnbuckle like a good like 7 minutes before like they go and they do the busting up of Lindaman, and it's like one of the more gruesome like hard ways that you'll see in a while. And it just like it lulled me into completely forgetting about Chekhov's exposed turnbuckle, and then at like the exact right time he lawn darts Lindaman right into that turnbuckle, and the moment is just incredible. And I think that he gets better at this point as these matches go along, because it takes him that while to loosen up and be able to kind of perform at a level that he would want to a little bit.
Really fun match. Again, just for the historical purposes of it, I'm very glad that it happened. And it's worth sitting through, or powering through rather, the bad atmosphere and the slow start, because it always goes back to just, I still feel like there was an inherent level of CIMA brilliance in this match that I so greatly enjoyed.
yeah.
And that was
His mind's
quite
not
exciting
gone whatsoever.
Yeah, no, not you're exactly right. His mind's not gone. I mean, maybe his business acumen, but his mind in between the ropes is not gone.
But yeah, no, that's on that Gleat show, like that was the one thing I really felt like anyone's worth out of the way saying. The Tamura versus Chuck Giamatti match is good if you want to go back to that.
Okay, all right, good to know.
But Hayato Tamura, like he does a ripcord Spanish fly as the finish, and it looks gnarly on that. And you should be happy. Your boy TJP is the next G-Rex challenger.
Once again, he is not my boy. I do not want that reputation. I cannot have people thinking that TJP is my boy.
I mean, you are the biggest Ashwang fan I know. I
like SoCal surfer dude TJP. I don't care for the Ashwang. I like the guy in CMLL. I wish he was there full time.
No, I don't blame you on that. How much of Doi's produce show did you get to see?
Started the Mochizuki Jr. match yesterday, got distracted, never got a chance to come back to it.
I exited after that match. I got partway through like the big three-way trios match, and other than like the joke of Rita teaming with guys that he comes up to the navel on, there was not a whole lot there for me. I felt like I do kind of want to see Ryo Saito acting like a Saito brother, so I'm going to get back to that. But as soon as I saw that they were actually putting up the King of Gate network uploads, it kind of dropped down my priority list.
As it did for me as well. But I'll have some thoughts on that next week. I still want to go back and watch that show.
Yeah, no, I'm going to try to finish that up as well. But buddy, do you have anything else you want to touch on before we're out this weekend?
I do not.
So you could follow us on social media at Open VoiceGate. Cases at _ in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. If you want to step into the conversation, join the Voices of Wrestling Discord, where there's a great Dragongate channel with matches of the week, running commentary throughout the tournament, as well as Angry 216's match of the week. As well, we have our Open the VoiceGate channel, where that's where all of our show-related posts and news goes there. We have our pen tab of all of our historical shows. And Case, before we get out of here, I just want to give you and Alan one more plug. I really, really enjoyed your episode that you did with him on Pro Wrest Paradise this last week about Eddie Guerrero. It actually was the thing that kicked me off into starting my AAA rewatch, or my AAA watch. So I had the June 6th, 1992 show on as we've been recording tonight.
Yeah, for those that might have missed it, on the VIP section of the Pro Wrestling Torch website, myself and Alan did about 2 hours on the career of Eddie Guerrero. We talked about 2 New Japan matches from his time as Black Tiger. We talked about 1 AAA match, and then we talked about 1 WWE match, but I feel like it's a largely unheralded one, and one that even if you've seen, you should go back and rewatch. And then along the way, the nice thing whenever I do a show with Alan is I just have things that I want to talk to him about anyways, and so I shoehorn them into the podcast. And I thought in the middle of that show, we had a discussion that I think would pertain to anybody that listens to this show about where wrestling criticism lies in 2025 and kind of what people like Alan and I are doing, or how we're feeling maybe being disenfranchised from a lot of the current wrestling that we're seeing. And I found that to be a very interesting discussion, and I hope that other people will as well. So the 20th anniversary of Eddie's death is on the 13th. I believe this show is going to come out on the 12th. So if you've made it to the end of this and you have not heard that show, it's worth checking out, getting the subscription for a month if you're not already a subscriber. But it's one that I know I'm very proud of. I know Alan's very proud of. I know Mike really enjoyed it. It was a really, really fun podcast to do. So if you have not given that a look, again, you get 4 great Eddie Guerrero match recommendations, and they're not obvious ones. They're not ones that any other podcast is going to talk about. Alan's picks in particular are really off the walls. And then I had a AAA match that I really liked. And then, believe it or not, I had a WWE match that I really wanted to talk about. But again, that's on the PW Torch VIP section with our friend Alan. I had a blast doing that show, and I hope that everybody goes and listens to that.
Yeah, I need to go rewatch that WWE match after y'all talked about it, because
so good. It is so good.
I vaguely remember it happening as of the time of like while watching wrestling at that time, but there's something about that match that the way that y'all described it, and the fact that's freely on WWE YouTube means I will go hunt it out versus having to go mess up my Peacock algorithm going through like all their stuff there. So yeah, but that's going to do it for this week's VoiceGate. We'll be back with you next week talking about the end of the first round, the launch of the second round of 2025 King of Gate, as well as the Gate of Nostalgia show coming up this Monday. Have a good rest of your week, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for 2 Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.